My name is Jerry Wise, and this video is entitled The Power of Self-Differentiation. I've had a number of clients, in fact many clients, who have asked me if I would talk more about self-differentiation. Self-differentiation is not something you learn in a 15-minute video, and it's not something that's just easily grasped by 3 bullet points or do step A, step B, step C, and you're there. It's a much deeper process than that. It really does involve deep processes within us that are not easily addressed in just a simple how-to method. It requires, I think, actually it takes a lifetime, I think, to work on. However, I think a lot can be achieved by gaining even some measure of greater self-differentiation, where you seem to be freer, less emotionally reactive, more mature, more ourselves, by doing the work of self-differentiation. First off, well, what is self-differentiation? Self-differentiation implies that there's been some undifferentiation, meaning there's been some fusion or enmeshment or over-closeness going on that requires some self-differentiation, differing ourselves from something or somewhat. And I think that that really is the process of growing up, in which we have started out in our lives very dependent and very enmeshed, and as we mature we become more differentiated. And some people do that work, and some people don't. It's often kind of a road less traveled. Not everyone is interested in self-differentiation. Some people like or enjoy or are happy with the enmeshment or the fusion that they have in their family of origin and in their own relationships, and that's fine for them. Other people choose a path of recovery and want to truly be an authentic self. And that takes some work and some effort, some learning, some paradigm shifts, and I think that's what I wanted to talk about in this video, at least briefly, as much as I can in 15 minutes or so. As I mentioned, we began our life kind of enmeshed, imprinted, fused with our family of origin, and that this process and this connectedness exists throughout our lives. How much we gain a sense of self-differentiation from it is the level to which we mature, we find our true selves, we enter into relationships in a healthier, more differentiated way. I think we're also less likely to be reactive. We're less likely to be reactive to anxiety, conflicts, and panic within a system, within a group, within an emotional field. We're less likely to be as in tune with that and so reactive with that. And so therefore we achieve a better sense of balance, stability, happiness, a clarity of thought and feeling. And I think that's what self-differentiation really provides for those who are pilgrims and who do that work of self-differentiation. Enmeshment or undifferentiating with our family of origin creates the ways we see our whole world, the way we see our relationships, the way we see ourselves. This is truly the basis for our paradigm that we have. This lack of self, this undifferentiation, creates emotional reactivity, poor relationships, life's failures, painful depressions, and is the basis for addictions, and it is the basis we see ourselves and our world. The more we gain the sense of self-differentiation, I think the less we are connected to all of those things I just mentioned, and we find a freedom from poor relationships, life failures, etc. With this understanding, we can begin to see a way to stabilize or mature our emotional life. When we address the root cause of our enmeshment and the root cause of our undifferentiation, we then begin to heal and develop our own emotional gyroscope that can kind of guide us and balance us in a much more stable way. For self-differentiation, defining and managing self is truly the core of the work of therapy and of the recovery process. I believe the process of self-differentiation involves A, resolving childhood and adult enmeshment with our family of origin, created by wounds and imprinted intergenerational immaturity and immature paradigms. That's all of our inheritance from our growing up. And if we resolve those and define ourselves in contrast to those, we really can make a big difference in our lives. B, learning and practicing systems thinking, which is learning more about and practicing seeing things from a 30,000-foot view. I think the more immature you are emotionally, the more you see things on a 6-foot view. The more you grow in self-differentiation and maturity, the more you see things from a 30,000-foot view. C, learning and practicing a healthy balance of the two forces of togetherness and separateness. Often this has gotten out of whack in our family of origin, probably for the last 5 generations. It's an out of whack process of having too much togetherness, too little separateness, too much separateness, too little togetherness, and that balance is off. And so the practice of maintaining that healthy balance of togetherness and separateness, here's fusion and there's cutoff. How do we have a healthy balance of the two? And maintaining a healthy balance, that's a work of self-differentiation. D, defining and managing self, your authentic self, while staying connected to others. And I think that's maintaining that balance. Defining yourself while staying connected. Usually we either have a hard time defining ourselves, but we stay overconnected, or we define ourselves while being underconnected. And either of these processes can cause lots of reactivity, lots of problems within us and within our relationships. Increasing your self-differentiation or healing your undifferentiation is a lifelong work, as I've said. And I believe that the sooner you begin this work and the more stable your life becomes and the more you can stabilize your emotional life, the more you can increase your tolerance for joy, increase your tolerance for healthy relationships. Most of us don't think in relationship systems ways. We think in more individualistic ways. We think about ourselves as disconnected from our emotional systems and our family of origin. Oftentimes we see the root and beginning of all of our feelings that we feel inside as having nothing to do with our past. It only has to do with the present. And it has nothing to do with a larger system, only has to do with how I feel right now and the way I think my circumstances are just as I see them with my own eyes. That's not a very systems way of looking at things. And therefore our map for knowing what our feelings are about, where they come from, how do we manage them, is very truncated and very myopic, very small. And that causes us difficulties in being able to grow up, mature, have healthy relationships, and self-differentiation as, I think, a way of thinking in a bigger way. I think of self-differentiation on a scale of 0 to 10, and several have used this concept. It's certainly not mine alone. I mean, I didn't think it up. It's been thought of ever since Murray Bowen started writing. And, on the low level of self-differentiation, and again, this has nothing to do with someone's morality or goodness or badness or anything in terms of good or bad. It only has to do with where we are within our emotional systems. The low scale, where we have little self-differentiation from our family of origin and from others. On the higher end of the scale, say a 10 versus a 0, a 10, we have a strong self-differentiation from family of origin and others. The low number, we are victims of chronic anxiety and are too finely tuned to our family of origin and the groups or relationships in our lives, and we tend to be less ourselves and more reactive to emotional systems. If we're higher on the scale, if we think subjectively, higher up on the scale, we are more truly ourselves. We are less reactive to emotional systems that we're a part of, family of origin, marriages, workplace, actually anywhere, because wherever we are on the scale of self-differentiation, we take that everywhere with us. So it's not just in our marriage, it's in all of our life. The high number, we are less finely tuned to our family of origin and to group and relationship anxiety. The lower we are in the scale, our thinking and feeling becomes blurred. We kind of feel-think. That's a way of thinking it. On a 10, you tend to have thoughts and feelings. At a 0, 1, 2, we tend to have feel-think. It all just happens all at once. And we don't realize the separateness that's so important, that's needed. So we're not able to think very clearly. We just feel-think. And on the high scale, our thinking and feelings are much more defined and clear. And again, more ourselves and less reactive. So how do we increase our level of self-differentiation? Well, we resolve our emotional glue between us and our family of origin. That's one nice statement that takes years to do, but it's a beginning place that we begin to understand and learn, and that with real work, even small changes can make huge effects and changes in our own life. By the way, I didn't say that we should cut off from our family of origin, because a cutoff is equal to too much fusion. Enmeshment is equal to too much fusion. Cutting off is also equal to too much fusion. If we neither need to cut off or enmesh, then we're in the middle and we're self-differentiated. And so I don't suggest cutting off from your family of origin, but resolve the enmeshment and intergenerational intimidation, fear, and unhealthy bonds within your family of origin. And this will affect every other relationship in your life. All of us have been imprinted by our family of origin. We are all stuck, more or less, in our emotional glue of the emotional systems that we're a part of. Breaking free from this glue by internally letting our family go through resolving hurts, triangles, dysfunctional patterns, we can define ourselves and experience emotional freedom. As a result, we are less a product of our family of origin and more the real us, and who we choose to be and who we desire to be. Secondly, we learn to think, see, and feel in systems ways. Learning to see emotional fields that we operate in, these include our family of origin. This process is essential and important in that it will help us free us to be more ourselves. And that being able to zoom in and out, meaning zoom in on content or zooming in on a 6-foot level and be able to zoom out to a 30-foot level, is so empowering. And if one can learn to do that, which we all can learn, we can really, it's a lot of leverage for us to be ourselves. It really does empower us to be who we want to be. A wife, let's say, has betrayed her husband. That was some time ago. They're in the process of rebuilding their relationship. The husband recognizes that the wife has stayed late at work. And This ignites the husband because his anxiety, probably chronic anxiety, has now just been ignited. And he really comes to her and says, "What were you doing at work late tonight? What does that mean?" And the wife stays at work one night. Her husband complains to her, and he says, I don't think I can ever trust you again. The wife can say at the content level, the wife can stay at the content level and argue over the point. And again, this is the 6-foot level. And she can say, well, I only did it once. I only had one affair in all of our 25 years. John, or the husband, you were a workaholic and never paid attention to me. Or our marriage was hurting long before I had the affair. And honey, what about the times you lied to me about money in our relationship? She can be defensive, and then we have an argument between he and she. He doesn't feel more comforted, and she feels more upset, and now the relationship has more distance in it. Or she can do the work of self-differentiation, resolve her family of origin fusions, triangles, and hurts, and can then stay calm and not have her buttons pushed by John to say to John, her husband, I'm sure you're still hurting. I want you to know I'm sorry. I love you, and there's no one else I want to be with other than you. To argue keeps this couple stuck in the weeds of content. To address what John's doing or address what's going on in the process is to see the system at work. John feels insecure, and he begins to move away from his wife, Ellen, and he feels frightened about being intimate with her, so he moves away by starting an argument. And instead of staying in the argument, she sees what's going on between the two of them at a 30,000-foot view and addresses that problem rather than the content. But if we're not free inside to do that, if we're still stuck and enmeshed in our own ways, family of origin and present, we can't see that what process is going on, what's really going on. We just get stuck in the content. When John makes these statements, he is feeling distant, fearful, jealous, and cut off from Ellen. Ellen can learn to recognize this and address what John is pained about rather than what John expresses. And this is what I call learning to shift between the content and the process. Also, John can learn to do that too. He gets ignited by feeling distant, fearful, jealous, and cut off because of his own family of origin, enmeshment, and problems that he hasn't resolved, and just brings them over and puts some layers on top of the relationship with Ellen. It's important that we sometimes address content, but very important that we learn to see process. But this occurs when we learn to see our own process in our own family of origin and beyond. Clients talk about how much the work of self-differentiation has improved their lives, reduced their reactivity, empowered them in many areas of their lives and careers. It has improved their marriages and clarified and matured their thoughts and emotions. I think there's a lot more to learn about self-differentiation. This is an unfair overview of self-differentiation, a very limited one. But I hope it gets you thinking about that. There are books to read by Harriet Lerner, The Dance of Anger. She's one of the few Bowen authors out there. Roberta Gilbert is another one. Extraordinary Relationships is another book you might want to take a look at. I hope this video has been a help to you. If I can be of help, give me a call. You can see me in my office, or we can do Skype counseling if that would help you, if you're not from the Indiana area. And I sure hope you've been benefited by the video, and thanks for listening. Hi, everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm a life and relationship coach. I've been helping people for over 40 years, many years, a marriage and family therapist, pastoral counselor, chemical dependency therapist, psychiatric therapist, pastor. I've worn many hats. And now I'm a life and relationship coach and have clients all over the world. And I'm excited to bring you this new program today. Also, I use a Bowen Family Systems approach as well as some other theoretical approaches as well. But primarily a family systems approach to help people differentiate. To self-differentiate. And I consider that self-differentiation kind of an advanced form of recovery. And so I've used that for many years. What I'd like you to do today, if you would, subscribe to my channel, use the button to subscribe to my channel. You also can click the bell, which then will notify you when new videos come out. And if you'd like to join the memberships here on YouTube, you can get exclusive content. And then we're going to be having merchandise, which we've already started that store. We're going to have merchandise that you can purchase for discounted rates. So those things will be coming. I work with adult children of alcoholics, adult children of narcissists, many adult issues, codependency, family issues, business problems, organizational problems, and executive coaching as well. I also have a couple of staff members that I've trained over the years, and they're excellent. They're also available. And in addition to that, we have a team also to help people with starting their business, with their websites, with social media marketing, with YouTube production, and YouTube ideas, and we really want your ideas to get out there. And there is a reason for that. I don't make any money off that part of the business in helping people get started with their own businesses online. I would like to see the world change, and I don't have that many years left. I hope I'm going to be here for a while, but I would like to leave the world in a better and different place. And I think these are some ways that I can do that. This program today is entitled How Not to Change as a Codependent. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, so I understand that. But tongue-in-cheek helped me when I was recovering in my codependency for many years. And in my codependent recovery, that sometimes I needed to laugh, or sometimes I needed to see the absurdity of the things that I had done. Because my paradigm was so set that I couldn't see it. Also, I was also very over-serious as a codependent. And so I thought today I wanted to tell you or share 22 ways in which you should, to give you wisdom about how not to change as a codependent. I spend all my life trying to help people change. I'm going to share with you how not to change. Firstly, don't change the paradigm. Don't change your paradigm. Only make pseudo changes within the same box. Don't think outside the box. In other words, if we use the same box to discover a solution to a problem, then we're only going to shift around in the box. That's why we talk about thinking outside the box. You really do have to think outside the box, so we have to learn more to do that. But to not change, continue thinking the way you have always thought, and continue to not look outside for new information that will help transform your life. Number two, focus on content and not the process. Focus on the problems and not what's going on. What's afoot, as in what Sherlock Holmes, I think, the game is afoot, meaning it's happening, this game. And so what's afoot? Don't look at what's afoot, just focus on the problems. I think about having a toddler who, and I know those of you have children and young children, and I know you've done this before. They're over there by the TV and they're banging on a drum or banging on a pan or something like that, and it's irritating and you'd like that problem to go away. And then you hear nothing and you're going, what? I wonder what that's about. And then they're over there messing with the TV, which you have asked them not to touch the TV, not to, get near it, not change the channels. And so as soon as you see the drum, know they've been messing with the TV, then you, and also particularly when you hear them as they're quiet, I wonder what's afoot. I wonder what's going on. And I know you've done that with your kids. We want to do that with our relationships too. But if we're going to continue in our codependency, we don't want to see what's afoot. We want to just focus on the problem, on the content, not the process of what's happening. Always react out of anxiety, or continue to react out of anxiety. Don't respond, just react all the time to when you get reactive. If you continue to do that, then you will not change as a codependent. Remember, number 4, to feel, only don't think. So feel only. That's the main thing. Stay in your feelings. I'm definitely one who believes staying in feelings and learning about our feelings are very important. But that doesn't mean I want you to stay in your system's feelings or reactive feelings. That's where it's problematic. I believe feelings are very important. But stay in your feelings and be reactive to them. And don't think, just react. And it also ends up giving us that feel-think experience where we bring together feelings and thinking process and they just ping off of each other rather than separating them out. And more mature individuals will have feelings and they will have their thoughts. And the more those are separated out, the less enmeshed they are, the healthier they become. So as us codependents, our feelings and thinking is all baked into the cake batter. And unfortunately, years ago, I used to love to eat cake batter. Maybe I can share that with you as well. I love chocolate cake batter. And I don't know if I'm the only one who would do that, but that's one of the things I liked. And so the cake batter would have all those different ingredients, feelings, thinking, and they would just be all mixed in one bowl. And that's what we have as codependents. And if we want to not change, then keep that same mix. Fifthly, let your feelings and reactivity guide you. In other words, let that feel-think guide you. Let that reactivity guide you in what you do. Because if you do that, then we won't change. Sixthly, work to raise the anxiety of others. For example, using bad timing and expose issues in inappropriate ways. So be sure to raise the anxiety of other people because that will keep you very reactive, and then it will be this soup of a mess of emotional field. The emotional field will just be filled with anxiety, and nobody will be thinking, nobody will be calm, nobody will be differentiated or mature. So be sure to raise issues at the wrong time when there's the greatest amount of anxiety, or you can create the greatest amount of anxiety. Seventh, always choose others first. Never choose yourself. Keep choosing others first and do it with gusto. That way we won't change and we will not change our codependency. Always choose others.
Eighth, stay unaware of your needs, feelings, and identity, or choices, or preference. Always keep that a blind spot for you. And continue to say, well, I don't know what my feelings are. I can't identify what I want or my needs. Oftentimes it's not a can't, it's I'm not ready to identify those. And that an unwillingness to identify those. There's only one person who knows your needs, and that's you. So I can't go ask somebody else what my needs are. I will have to do the work of my own needs. But to stay codependent, be sure to stay ignorant of those things. Never look at those things. Never explore those things. And keep saying you can't, and keep saying, I just don't know. Remember, often when I don't know, it means I'm not ready to know yet, or I'm unwilling to know yet. Ninth, try very hard to get others to change so you can lower your anxiety and their anxiety. Always put the lowering of your anxiety on other people and try to get them to change, to perfect them, to fix them, to make them love you more. Always do that so you can lower your anxiety. If you keep doing that, then we will not change as codependents. Always do what others expect of you to lower your anxiety. So always do what others want so it will keep the peace. And so that everybody's anxiety will go down. Always keep doing that, and then we won't change. And that will be important that we not. So we want to, again, use that as a way of lowering anxiety. 11, be assertive without taking into account the emotional field, and I've kind of talked about that, all the emotions that are the electric field that runs and connects everyone in your relationships, or how you are operating in this relationship system, or the underlying emotional process. For example, don't take into account we're at a family dinner and somebody says, well, I like this political candidate, and you say, well, I never have, and I don't know why, that I don't believe that. In fact, I have a number of clients who have gotten very frightened about their family has one political view or religious view, and they have others. They have other views. And that they will many times raise the family's anxiety while they're trying to be themselves. And I think that's where we need to manage and self-regulate our own calmness. And so we'll drop the bomb in the family, or we'll do it in public. We choose things that just raise the anxiety rather than staying calm and choosing the people we're going to be self with, or make I statements, or share my beliefs. And in fact, for her, I was going, well, why do you even then talk to your family about religion or politics? You're not going to change them. They're not going to change you. That's okay. They may get information from outside, somewhere else, that doesn't need to come from you. And that just because someone makes an opinion or says an opinion, even if it's an ignorant one, at a family situation, doesn't mean I need to correct that. It's not mine to correct. It may not be my view, but I don't need to correct it. That's them. 12, always look for the negative aspects of relationship problems or disturbances. And we always look to see how this problem causes these negative consequences. And stay focused on that, rather than having a more systems understanding of how does this problem, what is the positive aspects of this problem? How does it serve the relationship? And how does it keep everybody safer or less anxious? Or me more anxious and them less anxious? How does this problem function in our marriage, in our friendship, in our sibling or parent relationships, or children relationships? 13, be over empathetic and then be sure to swing over to rejection or judgmentalism. And so what we do is we become overly sympathetic, overly empathetic, and then after a while we'll swing back over here to being resentful, judgmental, or what was I saying? Or rejecting. And we'll be kind of rejecting. And then we'll swing back and forth. So always be over this and over that with a hyphen, over hyphen. 14, work to be different while not being responsible for self or a responsible I. In other words, you may also want to be responsible for everything. And you may try to work out being different, but you're blind to how you're contributing to the dysfunction of the relationship. I'm not saying you should be blamed. It's not a blaming. It's how we function. It's neutral. It's not a blaming situation. But if you want to not change as a codependent, then don't take any responsibility for how you function in the relationship, or take all the responsibility for how you function in the relationship. 15, only see people as normal or normal with a problem, and see only the good in people. Now, having come from a pastoral background, I was a pastor and a bishop for a number of years. And certainly I taught to love your neighbor as yourself, love other people. I believe that. But not everyone is a good person. Now, they may be created by God, those of you who have religious and spiritual faith. I understand that. But that doesn't change the fact that some people are really unwell, and some people are really broken, disordered, or maybe a cluster B, the narcissist, borderline, sociopathic. There are folks who have those type of problems, a lot more than we'd like to admit. But the best way to stay codependent is only see people as they're just normal, they just have a little problem. I know a daughter who had a very malignant narcissistic mom, and she would always see her as, well, she's just a normal person and she just does these bad things. No, she's not just a normal person who does these bad things. She is really unwell, really, really unwell. And that's the way I saw everyone also, as in practicing my codependency. 16, work hard to save everyone but you. Spend all of your time giving, and work hard. Try to save everyone, but don't save you. 17, always talk in codependent muddle. Never say what you mean, never say what you want, need, or desire in a calm way. Never do it that way. Always talk in codependent muddle. And I wish I had some more examples of codependent muddle. I've been listening to different folks and I'm trying to write down the codependent muddle that we hear, which is in which people don't really tell you what they want to do. Much like when you say, hey, is there something would you like to go out to eat? Yes. Where would you like to go? As we're the codependent asking them where they'd like to go. And they say, well, wherever you'd like to go. That's codependent muddle. Because what I could say is, well, I'm feeling like going to a Mexican restaurant. But I'm certainly open to going other places. But you asked me where I'd like to go. I'd like to go there. But I can go to other places and other restaurants with different food. But at least I'm clear. I'm not just muddling and doing that codependent muddle talking. 18, never inconvenience anyone. Never inconvenience anyone. Avoid that like the plague. You know, we always inconvenience people. We're always being inconvenienced. And I have people that ask me, let's say they'll need a session or they're having a problem, they'd like coaching. And let's say it's like, well, they got to meet with me at 8 p.m. in the evening. And say, is that inconvenient for you? You know what I tell them? Yeah. But so what? I can choose that. So you don't have to worry about my inconvenience. I'll worry about that. If I didn't want to give it that time to you, I wouldn't. Or people will say, well, won't that be an inconvenience if you do that? I'll go, yes. And that's okay. You know, that because I'm accepting that others can be inconvenienced and I can be inconvenienced. And that's perfectly normal. And that's human. Rather than I want to make sure I never inconvenience anyone. And that's the codependent mindset. 19, always be responsible for the feelings of others, especially how they feel about you and especially how they feel about everything. Always be responsible for the feelings of others. If someone feels a certain way about you, you should be responsible for that. Of course, if we do that, you know the problems that happen when that happens. And in fact, now I'm only like, I don't know, it's always difficult. 99%, I am not 99% responsible for your feelings. There may be a few instances in which there could be a case, but I'm still not inside you. So I'm not responsible for your feelings. You're responsible for your feelings. But make sure you remain responsible for everyone's feelings. Make sure they feel good. Make sure they don't feel bad. Always work at that. And that will be exhausting, but it will keep you in place as a codependent. 20, take everyone seriously. Always be over serious. And be sure to take things personally. We always take everyone seriously. And there are lots of comments, people, experiences we should not be taking seriously. Even if they are negative towards us. Let's say you're in a narcissistic relationship, your narcissist calls you stupid. I hope you don't take that seriously. Because if you do, then you see them as a normal person with a problem, rather than a person who's disordered, not well, and very toxic and dangerous. But we'll look at them and go, well, that they think I'm stupid, that really hurts me. Why would something ludicrous hurt you? And in the videos I've used, they called you a Coca-Cola. Why would you take that seriously? Because you're not stupid. Probably you've been overfunctioning for who knows how long. Stupid people don't overfunction. 21. Be sure to absorb everyone's beliefs, feelings, thoughts, and anxiety so that you don't observe and seem cold and distant and mean. So be sure to absorb everybody and the whole family system and the whole emotional field. Be sure to just absorb it, because then you'll feel like you're one of everybody, even if it's an uncomfortable role to play. Be sure to absorb all of that, because if you observe rather than absorb, they will think you cold, distant, or mean. So be sure to absorb everything around you. 22. When dealing with difficult people, always stay in your feelings. Be sure to stay in your feeling system when you're dealing with difficult people. That will help us to continue to be codependent. And of course, the opposite is stay in your thinking system, not your feeling system, when dealing with difficult people. But if we want to stay codependent and how not to change, always stay in your feelings when you're dealing with difficult people. I hope you'll subscribe today to this channel. Click the bell, click join to become a YouTube member. And I hope you'll follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also have monthly calls that we make for members on my website. So I have YouTube members and I have website members. I want to thank you for joining me today. Have a great day and be wise. Hi, everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I've been a life and relationship coach for over 40 years, helping people to self-differentiate and recover from dysfunctional pasts and childhoods. This video is entitled 8 False Beliefs That Control Your Life. These are the core beliefs that truly make a difference in our recovery. And to address them can make a huge difference in feeling better, recovering, and feeling a greater sense of self and self-differentiation. I hope that you'll join my YouTube channel, click the subscribe button, click the bell button, click the join button, and become a paid member. It's only $1.99 a month, and it helps me create more free videos for you. These do take a lot of work and effort, and support from those who enjoy my videos would be greatly appreciated. I also have a master class coming up on December 5th, 2020, on Saturday from 1 to 5. It'll be 4 hours. It will be on Zoom, and it'll be a live workshop with me. There'll be lots of fun things that we'll be doing. More on that later. 8 false beliefs that will control your life. Often we have many self-limiting beliefs which control our lives. If we've experienced narcissistic abuse, or grew up a child of an alcoholic, or had a parent who was a narcissist, or were a child of divorce or abuse, or many other dysfunctional families, we will learn and believe, even as deep as the unconscious level, many beliefs which control our lives. And these I'd like to share with you are the 8 most common ones I have found. Number 1, there's something wrong with me. I am unlovable. I am inadequate, basically defective. I'm bad. I am insignificant. I'm important. And therefore, if I let people in on who I am, or if I am truly me, I will not be loved, accepted, and cared for by other people. I remember one of the beliefs that there's something wrong with me is I feared acting or feeling stupid or doing something embarrassing that might be perceived as being embarrassing. And there was such shame involved that I am shameful and full of shame. And that was one of my false beliefs that I grew up with. In other words, this belief is that I am exceptional, only in a bad way. I'm exceptionally bad. With these false beliefs, we suffer the imposter syndrome, particularly for ACOA or ACONs, adult children of narcissists, adult children of alcoholics, and many others experience the imposter syndrome, that if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me and you wouldn't love me. We spend our lives hiding or trying to get others to like, love, and accept us.
when we don't like, love, or accept ourselves. Therefore, I can never accept, know, or be myself. I can't know myself. With this belief, I can't accept myself, nor can I be myself. Because basically, there's something wrong with me. So I can't be me. Because to be me is to be wrong. That is a false belief that we have been imprinted or taught. Again, we feel we are defective. Often this belief is imprinted through shame or shaming parenting, or abuse, or alcoholism, or drug addiction, or all kinds of things that can happen in families, divorce. The family pain can produce these beliefs as well, especially if we become a scapegoat. Number 2, second false belief. I am powerless over how I feel. Other people or outside events are responsible for making me unhappy or happy. Other people are responsible for my hurt, anger, guilt, and disappointment. I just can't help how I feel. Nobody can, is the belief. Nobody can help how they feel. My good feelings come primarily from others' approval, and my bad feelings from their disapproval. Both are myths. I do not have the power to make myself happy within myself or to take care of myself in the world. I have to rely on other people, things, processes, or substances to make me happy or to take care of me. Therefore, I am a victim. And I am told by many, feelings are automatic. I have no control over them. They're just automatic. And I remember working many decades in the recovery community and in the therapeutic world of therapists and coaches, and I've heard from many that, their feelings are just automatic, Jerry. You can't do anything about those. You just have to do something opposite of those, or don't accept them. So many times we feel powerless over our reactivity and our feelings we believe are caused by others and other and external situations. But if you look in the real world, how come some people are not reactive and don't have the same feelings when a similar event happens to them as when it happens to you? Maybe those feelings they may be automatic for you, but I don't think it's true that we are powerless over our reactivity or our feelings. I think we can learn to become empowered over our reactivity and over our feelings, especially if we can understand them more, understand them from a self-differentiation approach, and understand them as false beliefs. We can begin to get our feelings under control, and it can really change within us if we do that. But the truth is, we can change our feelings by resisting our reactivity, by resisting systems feelings. See my video on true feelings versus systems feelings, and by reconnecting with ourselves and our inner adult and inner child. See my interview with Margaret Paul recently, who wrote the book Inner Bonding. You would be surprised how much you can change your feelings and how you're not just a victim of them. Because not only can we be a victim of other people, we end up being a victim of ourselves if I'm powerless over how I feel. Now I'm a victim of myself and my own feelings. And we don't have to be a victim of either. Thirdly, other people's feelings are more important than mine, and I'm responsible for their feelings.
This is a common one believed by probably 99% of the people in the world. Dr. Margaret Paul states in her book, Inner Bonding, which I would strongly recommend you get, when others feel hurt, disappointed, or upset because of something I've done with no intent to hurt them, I'm wrong and it's my fault and I deserve the guilt I feel. Making myself happy, again with no intent to harm others, when others want me to make them happy, it is therefore selfish and unloving and therefore wrong if I try to make myself happy. To be a loving person, I have to sacrifice what I want for what others want. And that is a common misconception. And it goes along with this false belief that other people's feelings are more important than mine and that I'm responsible for their feelings. Again, I feel I cause others hurt, disappointment, anger, upset in others. If I care for myself and not change or try to fix their bad feelings, then I'm just being selfish. It's so illogical. It's so false. And I remember giving an example in one of my earlier videos about the family prayer. I was a pastor at the time, and I knew my mother wanted me to pray at all of our family gatherings. Well, I really didn't want to do that and have that burden tossed onto me because I happen to be a pastor, and that I must always do that every time. I just didn't choose to do that. That is my preference. It isn't necessary that I do that. But to say no was to create in others hurt, create in others disappointment, create in others anger, create upset in others. And for me, I was very worried about needing to fix their bad feelings, and so I would comply. Then I began to work on the work of self-differentiation and began to say, no, wait. I'm saying no with no intent to hurt anyone. I simply am setting a boundary. It's not a desire to not be a part of the family or not even occasionally pray for the meal. I don't mind that. I just don't want the appointed role of doing it every time we are together. That's what I don't want. But again, my concern was, if I do that, I will cause a bunch of bad feelings in other people. That was a false belief. And as I began to walk out a more self-differentiation or self-differentiated move and saying no, and that's a long story that you have to watch that video about that, it began to free up all of us in the family to do what we wanted to do. And not just go by whatever mom wanted us to do or whatever certain people in the family wanted us to do. I hope you'll please join my YouTube channel, and I hope you'll sign up for the masterclass on reducing your reactivity on December 5th, 2020. Number 4, false belief. I can control what others think of me and how they treat me. I can make them like me or love me or be open to me, or by being good, nice, open, vulnerable, compliant. Or I can make them treat me how I want to be treated by getting angry or righteous or blaming. Either I can be the victim or I can be the Viking. Neither one often gives us the result that we truly want for the long haul or in a healthy way. Many of us live as we believe we have the power to control others' feelings, to like me, to accept me, to love me. But like is unconditional, acceptance is unconditional, and love is unconditional. So it's not about performance. It is hard to earn that. Now, that doesn't mean we can't be nice or be acceptable or be loving. It doesn't mean we can't do those things, but those things are given to us as a gift. It's not something we earn in that respect. It's something just like respect. I know respect should be earned, but respect should also be given. And in some situations, we betrayed that respect, and then we may have to do some things to help change that system and change that pattern. One of the difficulties in getting people to see how false a belief this is comes from us having short-term gains or success by making people happy, getting someone to like us, and hustling for love. You know, it does work, but it often ends up not being true love that we get, not getting true acceptance that we get, and not even getting true joy. We get a temporary, superficial love, acceptance, or joy. And it's not long-term, and it's not even based on the real us. It's based on the hustling us. And that's not the real us. Being good, nice, accommodating, helping, caretaking can make people like, love, and accept me. Not really. It's only a myth. But the opposite is also true. If I get angry, reactive, righteous, or blaming, I can make them feel differently about me. These tactics do not change things for the better. Good or bad, others will have their own reactions and feelings and beliefs about us. They have to decide whether they want to change those or not. Because if they want to change them, then maybe we can work on seeing me differently. But I cannot make them change. Fifthly, resisting others' control over me is essential to my integrity. As soon as someone wants something from me, I have to do the opposite, even if it's something I want to do or I want to give, or I will lose myself to that other person we fear. In other words, we feel this overprotective side of us, an overreactive side of us, that if someone's trying to control me, I have to blow up really big and I have to be really reactive to counter it. There's a difference between resisting control and pushing it away versus letting go of the control or the rope, as I call it, between us, and standing in the confidence of not being controlled. Because what's interesting is, except for severe situations, no one can control you. I realize a judge can, a policeman can, an abusive person could. I realize there's situations in extreme cases where that's the case, and those take special work and special help. But for most of us, no one can control us if that's not our choice. I'm the one keeping in and holding on to the rope and keep pulling on the tug of war and pulling the game of tug of war with them. Resisting is the only way for me not to lose myself. The problem is not that others have control over you, but that you fear losing yourself because you are not firmly connected to yourself. The reason we feel so much like we're going to lose ourselves, and we call that engulfment, and we can have a fear of engulfment, which keeps us under the control of others, and we are not connected to ourselves, so we fear that engulfment, or we become reactive and push people away so that we aren't controlled. And actually, their control is controlling our reactivity. So it's paradoxical. Even though we're resisting being controlled, we are resisting the control, so we're still in the game of the control. And what we want to do is step away from it and let go of the tug-of-war rope. And that's what I train and help people to do, so that they no longer need to resist it, fear it, or even believe it's actually happening. That we have control of ourselves. They only control us with our permission, our unconscious permission. Number 6, false belief. I can't handle pain, discomfort, fear, hurt, grief, disconnection from others, boredom, disappointment, shame, or aloneness. I have to protect myself from these feelings. And I have to protect myself through anger, caretaking, and withdrawal, and activities such as sex or work or with substances as alcohol or food. And again, we oftentimes feel we need to protect our feelings with anger. And anger is a secondary feeling. We always want to find out what's underneath the anger and the primary feeling. And often we feel we can't handle those feelings, so we just express ourselves in anger, because we don't feel we can handle those deeper primary feelings. We have the fear we would not survive our own feelings. And I absolutely remember having an experience of that. When I was much younger, my dad passed away many, many years ago. And probably passed away 35 years ago, like 35 years ago. I remember fearing my own grief or sadness that I would have when he would die. My father had a stroke, which paralyzed him on one side, and he lost his speech. He was a principal of the school I went to, so I was a principal's kid. That was great fun. Some perks, some problems. And I knew his days would be numbered, that he's not going to live a long, long time when you have a stroke that's so debilitating like that, because that causes many problems. He had difficulty walking and all kinds of struggles. And what was so heartbreaking was that when he wasn't thinking about it, he could talk for a brief time. But then once he became conscious of wanting to talk, then he couldn't talk. It was such a cruel illness and a cruel disease. I was so avoidant of my sadness and fear of grief and fear of losing him, I did not want to even touch those feelings because I thought I would be overwhelmed by them. And so many of us have grown up in which we've feared being overwhelmed by our feelings. We just couldn't handle it. And so I didn't do very much of the pre-grief work, which is healthy for us to do. And that's where we do the preparatory grief before a problem occurs. If your parent becomes ill, though they may not be terminally ill, but if they become ill and they're older, it's probably not a bad idea to do some preparatory grief of that. Because the more we begin to process that grief, not that we want them to pass away, we want them to remain with us, but not that we want them to pass away. But I'm starting to get in touch with those feelings so they may not feel quite so overwhelming. I thought I would just not or could not survive the loss of a parent and the painful feelings I would feel. And I think I lost my mother about 3 years ago. And again, thinking, can I endure that? And I would tell myself, of course you can. Remember, if you lose someone who truly matters to you,
you will feel grief and sadness. And that's it. You're going to feel grief and sadness. And that you're able to get through that. But I thought it would overwhelm me. And in fact, I thought any of my feelings would overwhelm me. Shame, guilt, fear of engulfment, abandonment. I thought they all would engulf me. The fear of these feelings and avoidance of these feelings, which was much worse than the true experience of these feelings. I did have a fear of death and a fear of others close to me dying. But it is a myth and a false belief that we would not be able to endure our true feelings. We can also feel them. We have more control over feeling them than you might realize. And in working with people on feelings work, many times it can be done in a slow baby step way that they don't have to become overwhelmed by their feelings. We just weren't trained in that. We weren't imprinted in that. We didn't see role models for that. False belief 7. If I change others, then I will be changed as a result. False belief. This is an external solution to our own self-work by changing others. If I can only get my family, my husband, my kids, my parents to be happy, healthy, more mentally healthy, more understanding, more accepting of my life, then my life will be changed as a result. Good luck with that program. Excuse me. You know, one interesting thing in family systems dynamics, many of us are not even prepared for our family to be mentally healthy, mentally mature, more accepting, more loving. We're not even prepared for that. And we think we are. We've been programmed and imprinted to have them behave and act out their roles too, just as they have imprinted us to act out our roles. We just think we're ready for them to change. Because many times I've had parents actually changed and it's thrown the child or the client off because the parents did change and they weren't sure what to do with all that. When a parent became more self-differentiated, more healthy, it was very difficult for them. We don't change by changing others. This is a fantasy, a myth, and a delusion. We can change by healthy giving to others, by healthy helping of others, by healthy loving of others, but it cannot be achieved for our own purposes or to change us as a motive. Because then it's not real helping, real loving, and real giving. It's done to protect. It's done to get acceptance. It's done to get the hustle of love or acceptance or caring from others. And it has a paradoxical effect of making it non-effective. Number 8, the 8th false belief. If I only work on changing me, it won't change other people. If you notice, the last 2 false beliefs are paradoxical. To work on you by changing others will not work. To work on changing me can in fact change others. But I have a lot of people that have a resistance to working on themselves because number 1, they want the changes to come much quicker. You just got to make these people around me change, Jerry. Teach me how to do that. And it takes a longer process to change me so that it then is contagious or affects them. But that's where I've seen real changes happen. And I've given lots of examples in my videos of people who have succeeded in that. How families have been changed because one person changed. To try to change others will not change you. To change you will oftentimes change others, but it cannot be for that motive. And that's a family system maxim. Leo Tolstoy wrote, "Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself." Rumi, in a quote, states, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself." Roy T. Bennett wrote, "You cannot change anyone, but you can be the reason someone changes." And Jacob M. Broud writes, "Consider how hard it is to change yourself, and you'll understand what little chance you have in trying to change others." I want to thank you for watching today. Please subscribe, click the bell, become a paid member of the YouTube channel. Sign up for the workshop. I hope you'll follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I want to thank you for joining me today. Have a great day, and be wise.
The connection between being scapegoated and people-pleasing isn't obvious from the outside. People pleasers are usually described as too agreeable, too accommodating, too afraid of conflict. What that description misses is where it came from. If you were the scapegoat in your family, your people pleasing didn't come from a personality flaw. It came from a very specific type of training. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what that training was. I'm Jerry Wise, and for over 45 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of people heal and get their family out of them by practicing self-differentiation. The process of becoming your true self and releasing the false self you were trained to be in your family of origin, so that you can finally experience clarity, peace, and lasting freedom. Number one, as the scapegoat, you were punished for being real. There was a version of you that was too much, too emotional, too truthful, too aware, too disapproving of the dysfunctional side of the family. The real you created a problem in the family. The scapegoat role required a version of you that the family could point to as the issue, and the real you kept getting in the way of that. Every time you showed up as yourself or showed how you really felt or saw reality as it really was, you got punished. So you started editing your real self. So you learned to be whatever the room or the system needed, what people wanted to see. The real you stayed back while a more manageable version went out to meet people. People pleasing, at its core, is just that, the habit of sending a version of yourself you calculated would be accepted, because the real version of you will not be accepted or will probably get you into trouble. Number two, as the scapegoat, you learned that agreement was the fastest way to stop being the target. When conflict landed on you in the family, it stayed. Disagreeing didn't lead to a resolution. It led to more conflict, more blame, more isolation. You figured out that agreeing made things stop. You agreed not because you meant it, but because it worked. Agreement was a functional tool for making yourself less of a target, and you started using it. Actually, agreement can be a powerful tool to control others, and it really can. Codependent No More, the book by Melody Beatty, Codependent No More, How to Stop Controlling Others and Start Caring for Yourself. For the scapegoat, being agreeable was a way to survive in a dysfunctional, blaming family. And agreeableness was a way to get the spotlight off of you. And today, you still do it. We carried this behavior and pattern into adulthood. When someone says something you don't agree with, the disagreement is there, but what comes out of your mouth is something softer or nothing, or oh yeah, you're probably right. You've learned to hold your actual position privately and perform something more acceptable publicly. I'm not saying that's always bad, but if it tends to be the norm, then it's a problem. Certainly, I don't share my genuine, real feelings with everybody I come across in every situation at all times. We don't do that, and I don't think that's appropriate. But if you're people pleasing and managing what you share about how you really feel 99% of the time and withholding that, then that can be a real problem for your own sense of self and how others impact you and how you deal with that system, that relationship system. The people around you think they know what you think, but many times they don't know what you think. Number 3, as the scapegoat, your needs were treated as a problem. When you had needs in the family, they were inconvenient or evidence of something wrong with you. You were too sensitive, too demanding, too needy. The message, whether it was said directly or just lived out around you, was that needing things created problems. So you started doing the math. What does wanting something cost? And you decided that the cost was too high. And often now you decide the cost is still too high. Now you act like you don't have any needs. You deflect when someone asks what you want. You say you don't mind. When you do have a preference or needs, you arrange your life around other people's needs with a fluency that looks generous from the outside, but is self-denying on the inside. I think of an example in which there were some folks that I knew and they had a son, and both the parents knew they had not been great parents. They were good parents, but they were not great parents for their kids growing up. And one of their sons, they felt, he is just not in touch with his inner, he just wants to avoid his inner emotions and doesn't want to be known. And that's a real concern for them now that he's just launching into his own college or career and that sort of thing. And so he was going to a dance, and I think maybe a fraternity dance or something that was hosted. He had a girl that was going to go with him, and so they were happy about that. That's great that you have someone to go and enjoy themselves. He goes, the girl doesn't go. And mom then asked him, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Does that bother you that she didn't go? And he basically said, well, there's nothing I can do about it now. And no, it was fine. Everything was great. And again, the people-pleasing part, in other words, stay away from my inner life. There's nothing I can do about it now. Mom didn't ask, is there something more you can do about it now? She wasn't asking that. She was just asking how you felt, because as mom, she might feel, oh, that's kind of crummy that I was expecting to go with her, and then she's not. And I might feel some feelings about that. Not a big important thing, but he was staying away from anything that would prompt being known, causing a problem, have to talk more about a situation, and that can occur as well. Number 4, as the scapegoat, you were blamed before you could speak. In some families, the scapegoat is blamed before the conversation even starts. The verdict arrives before the evidence. You walked in already guilty and convicted, or convicted and guilty. I don't know. Maybe it was the look on their face when they saw it was you. Maybe it was how quickly your explanation became irrelevant. Or you experienced family mobbing, which is bullying by group. You learned that your version of events didn't really matter because the outcome was already decided. Now you apologize before anyone accuses you. You get out in front of it. The apology comes out of a reflex before you've even had time to think about whether you actually did something wrong or didn't. You over-explain. You provide more context than the situation needs. You anticipate blame and try to neutralize it before it lands. You're doing it because your nervous system learned early that you were going to be found guilty anyway, and we are still now trying to get ahead of it. Often, when we feel an urgency to try to get ahead of it, or ahead of the gossip, or ahead of the blame, or ahead of the accusation, we are often already put in our place. Because if we're in that position, and I call that an emotional location, if we're in that emotional location where we're trying to get out ahead of things, not that there aren't times it might be good to get out ahead of things, we are often already in not a great place. Defending, arguing, pushing back are often not effective means of getting out of the scapegoat role. I was a part of an organization where I did feel like I was being scapegoated. And what's interesting is the more you plead your case, in some ways, you're also communicating maybe the more guilty I am. And that's how people receive it in emotional systems. This requires another type of finesse and changing the direction of the relationship's use of the two forces that are always at work in relationships: togetherness and separateness. There's always togetherness, there's always a pull towards separateness, always a pull towards togetherness. In every relationship, you cannot avoid that. And that if we acknowledge that, and for example, if we argue, defend, react, complain, blame, we're actually not creating distance or healthy separateness. We are actually intensifying the enmeshment or togetherness force in the relationship. The more I hate you and communicate I hate you and say that on Facebook and send you texts that are, mean, the more I do that, the more I'm pushing us together. It is a too much of a togetherness thing happening. And if they win by me staying in this too much togetherness role, if they win, they can control my inner emotional thinking and feeling process. Let me give you another example. If I can get you to hate me or be angry with me or upset with me, then I set up a relationship in which you then are pursuing me through your anger, blaming, hate, and narcissists want you to pursue them either with admiration or dislike or upsetness. Either brings you into their orbit. And that's why neutrality is so important. That it's not too much togetherness and it's not too much separateness that resolve the conflict within us. It's the third option of neutrality. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I learned that when I was in this organization, and I learned that to be able to be more neutral. And I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to. And it lessens the impact of the people who are causing trouble for me or for others. This may sound complicated or even confusing. And I understand that in the Road to Self program, I do try to describe that. I describe this and talk about this to help you use the dynamics of relationships and human relationships to keep you out of others' emotional clutches. As I teach in my Road to Self program, the work of changing this role is not to get it out of the family. How can I make the family not see me as the scapegoat? You're going to waste lots of years trying to do that. But to get it out of you, and this is done through the work of self-differentiation. The scapegoat role can be a form of emotional, mental, and even physical abuse. While being the scapegoat in a family is very real and is often a mobbing dynamic, and that's what scapegoating is. It's this group of the family scapegoating you. It's that mobbing kind of relationships. We, as the narcissistic family, unconsciously all agree, and this is the mobbing part. We, as the narcissistic family, unconsciously all agree that to keep the blame or responsibility away from us, we choose Mary to scapegoat. This shift of responsibility relieves our inner stress, and keeps the spotlight away from us. We will sacrifice Mary to keep the emotional balance of the family so we do not have to change or become more healthy or become more insightful or become more responsible. And I might mention, people sometimes get confused when I say narcissistic family. I'll repeat that again about that concept. The concept does not mean everybody in the family is a narcissist. No different than, say, an alcoholic family. Not everybody in the family is an alcoholic, but everyone organizes themselves emotionally, mentally, behaviorally around the alcoholic. And so it becomes an alcoholic family. But it doesn't mean everybody has the addiction of alcoholism. Same with a narcissist, a narcissistic family. You have a narcissistic family if they are pulling the strings and calling the shots, and everybody's organizing around them, even if they're not narcissists. As the scapegoat, you were the one nobody checked on. There were people in the family who got attention, care, concern. When something went wrong for them, the family noticed and may have responded. When something went wrong for you, it was either ignored or treated as further evidence of your role, scapegoat. You learned to manage on your own because nobody was coming. The cavalry was not coming for you. Now you make sure nobody else feels that way. You check on people, you notice when someone goes quiet, and you look like warmth, and sometimes it can look like things are warm or caring, but underneath it, you still are the child who needed someone to notice and that they didn't. You're giving what you didn't receive, and that impulse is driving a significant portion of your people pleasing today. Because if our need for being seen, being cared about, loved, we might then go overboard to do that to everyone else in the hope of getting it or earning it or hustling for it. And again, I like Brene Brown's concept of hustling for love or hustling for self-esteem, hustling for acceptance. Something to remember. What you are good at or good at giving is many times what you lacked growing up. I'll let that sit. You can think about that. You can agree or disagree, but that might be a possible open door for you. Number 6, as the scapegoat, your place in that family was always conditional. You didn't have a secure position in the family. There was no unconditional belonging. Your place depended on your behavior, your role, your compliance, your words, how you expressed yourself, when you expressed yourself, how often you expressed yourself. When you stepped out of it, you felt the withdrawal. You were never quite sure where you stood, which meant you were always monitoring and always adjusting. You're still trying to earn it everywhere you go, in friendships, at work, in relationships. There's a low level of anxiety that lives just under the surface. Are they still okay with me? Did I do something wrong? What do they need from me right now? I do work with a lot of people pleasers or codependents, people pleasers, or people who they've just had to abandon their self to get acceptance or love or caring from other people. And I oftentimes will say, because that's your bent, because that's the way you tend to be, it's probably no risk to try to be someone who's not that. I would like you to go and be more disagreeable. And they go, well, I can't do that. Then people won't like me. No. We can go into all of that. And the issue is, you're way overboard. Here's being selfish. Here's being people-pleasing. If you choose to do some disagreeableness, why don't you be a problem causer? Why don't you, in an innocent and not bad way, it can move you more towards the inner and the middle part of being healthy by pushing the symptom, we might say. Then, go to work and cause some trouble. Not enough that it hurts anybody horribly or causes a financial disaster. But there's nothing wrong with being, what happens if you're such a people pleaser, then if sometimes you go, well, I'm not sure I would do that, everybody is aghast. Oh my gosh, they thought, oh, Jerry's got some disagreement with this. He never has disagreement. The reason why it's so technicolor and why it gets such big attention is because I'm out of balance over here. I want to be able to disagree or cause a problem in a positive way. And people don't go, oh my gosh, that's so unlike Jerry, because then people will see you as more human, and also I think it adds to trust and things like that. Not necessarily with the narcissistic parent. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying in our own recovery process. The people pleaser comes out because you never fully believed your place is secure. And the strategies you built to earn your position in that family are still running. Number 7, as the scapegoat, you were only safe when you were useful. Safety in that family had a price. It wasn't unconditional. You discovered that when you were needed, when you were performing a function, when you were helping or making someone's life easier, or managing their emotions or thoughts, you were less of a target. Being useful provided a kind of cover. It made you less visible to whatever was coming next, which was the closest thing to safety you could get. It is very confusing and difficult for a child to learn safety is earned, or safety is something that comes and goes. This foundational need was never really secure. Here we find the beginning of trust issues, confidence issues, and self-esteem issues. As a result, usefulness became the currency. You help before you're asked. You offer before the need is stated. You make yourself indispensable in relationships, at work, and in every room you enter, because somewhere underneath, your nervous system learned that the cost of not being useful is exposure. In your case, the people-pleasing runs deeper than waiting to make others happy or wanting to make others happy. It runs all the way back to the equation, useful equals safer. And certainly not being is safe. Number 8, as the scapegoat, you were never allowed to have a reaction. Emotional reactions in your family had consequences. If you were upset, you were seen as being dramatic. If you were angry, it was proof that you were problematic and dysregulated. And of course, the only one who was identified as dysregulated was the scapegoat. If you cried, it was manipulation. The scapegoat role required you to absorb things without visibly reacting, because any visible reaction could be turned against you. You learn to manage your face, your voice, your responses. We still may be managing those things today. You smile at things that hurt. You try to act calm in situations where you really don't feel calmness is appropriate at this point. You let things go publicly while carrying them privately. The pleasantness you project to the people around you isn't always how you actually feel. It's a practiced surface experience. And underneath it, there are reactions you've been suppressing for so long, you've stopped noticing that they're even there. If you're ready to finally break free and start living with clarity, peace, and a grounded connection to your true self, then join the Road to Self program. Many who have joined say it was the missing piece in their healing journey, the step that finally helped them get their family out of them and stand strong as their true self. If you're not sure the Road to Self program is for you right now, then start with my free 84-minute self-differentiation training. Over 50,000 people have joined the free training as their first step. Click the links in the description to get started. Please don't forget to subscribe. Also comment on this video. I read the comments. And hit the bell icon so you never miss a new video. I want to thank you for watching. Have a great day and be wise.